Joining me now is host of the Andrea Kaye radio show, Andrea Kaye, and Democrat strategist Kevin Walling. Thank you two for being here. I want to start off with the fact that, violence from any side is unacceptable. And my heart goes out to this young woman who lost her life, the family, the two officers that lost their lives. I mean, this is a real tragedy. But I also have to point out the fact that the way that this is being presented in the media and the discussion about it, it's almost as if the alt-left was not even in this picture. I mean, this was a volatile situation in all circumstances. So, Andrea, first of all, your reaction to what happened and also the response.
Well, my reaction to what happened is anytime that we have protest turn into violence, it's terrible because, one of the things that's so precious to me about being an American is our right of free speech and our right to assemble and to protest peacefully. And I stand on the side of that right being extended to any group, no matter how despicable, no matter how vile I find their speech. It's precious to me that we have the right to protest freely. And so, and it's devastating that anybody lost their life as a result. The reaction to it is equally despicable to me as the violence, because there's a lot of untruths and lies that have been told about what happened down there. For example, I'm not really hearing anybody in the media talking about the fact that the First Amendment rights of the organizers were illegally denied by the racist vice mayor, and how the ACLU had to step in and make sure that their rights were protected, only then to have supposedly these fascist groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter being bussed in with balloons filled with all kinds of excrement and stuff just to start violence. That should never be allowed in this country. And why is it that only one side is being portrayed as the bad people? And of course, it's because it was all nothing but a cultural Marxist attempt to make as many people as possible hate and smear Republicans and Trump supporters. And that's why there's nothing that he can say right now will please anybody on the left.
Good points there, Andrea. And Kevin, first of all, were you satisfied with President Trump's first response to the tragedy that took place in Charlottesville? And also, we know that we heard again from him today, and he was more specific, calling out the KKK, calling out white supremacists, saying that we don't tolerate this as a country. This is not who we are as Americans.
So, Stephanie, it's a great question. I was disgusted as an American that this president, my president, would compare the protests on the right, and this was a Unite the Right protest in support of a Confederate general statue, to the protest for racial justice and intolerance that were down there, with a young woman who's 32 who lost her life. My fiance went to the University of Virginia. I know Charlottesville well, and to see this kind of hatred and intolerance with these young men carrying tiki torches, I mean, they look like idiots with tiki torches from Target or wherever, in the streets, defending a Robert E. Lee statue. This is not the racism of a vice mayor. This is a popularly elected city government that voted to remove this statue, which Republicans are all about local control. But back to your original question, Stephanie, about this president and his initial response, comparing the two was a disgrace and a dishonor both to the young woman, 32, Heather, who lost her life, the two officers who gave their lives in defense of the right to protest. And again, the fact that this president has not declared this to be a domestic act of terrorism, you saw his attorney general call it an act of terrorism, but this president hasn't done that, is a disgrace. Well, this is a weak administration.
Kevin, I don't think it is a disgrace.
When this president should be uniting this country, he's not. He is comparing those two sides, which is a horrible thing to do in this country.
Kevin, I don't think it's a disgrace. I think that he was acknowledging the fact that we had an alt-left and an extreme right.
There is no
group.
such thing as an alt-left.
And for
Stephanie,
liberals and the left in the media to
try
to connect the two, that these are just Trump supporters and they're conservatives. What happened there has nothing to do with conservatives and the GOP. This is about people who.
If that's true, Stephanie, we need to have the president condemn that in the harshest tones.
And he did.
He did condemn it. May I jump in here?
After the vice president had to step up and condemn
Kevin,
it because he said it was equal on both sides.
He did condemn it, but he was condemning both.
He did condemn it, exactly. Just like you're not supposed to say.
Sure,
just
but
like
he
you're
did
not
it by
supposed to say.
comparing
going to get in here,
those
Kevin,
two
whether you keep
movements.
trying to talk over me or not. Just like you're not allowed to say all lives matter, you're not allowed to say all racism matters. You're not allowed to say all terrorism matters. No, that's why it's so dishonest about what the left is trying to do. Where was the left trying to pressure President Obama to denounce the terrorism that Antifa has been perpetrating on the American people now for a year? Where was the pressure on President Obama to denounce
How many
the
people have been
riots in
killed?
Ferguson
Andrea,
and
how
in
many people have been
Baltimore?
killed?
No, instead, President Obama, not only did he not denounce the terrorism that BLM perpetrated on this country, he invited them to the White House. Until President Trump invites some hate group into the White House,
Black Lives
then
Matter
you can
to
compare.
protests in the street are a disgrace,
Black Lives
Andrea,
Matter
and
was
it's
there and was a
totally
part.
false.
Absolutely, it was Black Lives Matter that perpetrated the
And this
violence in Baltimore
Barack
and in
Obama,
Ferguson.
President
It was at
Obama
a Black
brought us
Lives
together as
Matter
a
rally
country.
in
He
Dallas,
didn't
Kevin,
set
where
people
5
apart
police
from one
officers
another.
were murdered. 5 police officers in Dallas were murdered at a Black Lives Matter protest.
It was not a
and
Black
nobody
Lives
was,
Matter protest.
It was I guess a Black Lives Matter rally. They were assassinated by Black Lives Matter
in this country.
So,
And that's a horrifying thing. And we need to condemn that violence, as we've done on this program before, Andrea, as we do condemning this violence. But again, calling it as terrorism, as this president refuses to do, is a disgrace. If that driver was a Muslim driver, he would be out front nationalizing the National
and
Guard.
this has been labeled domestic terrorism. We've heard from our AG. The president has condemned what they've done.
Stephanie, has it been done by the president of the United States? Has he called this an act of terrorism?
He condemned what happened, and he condemned the people that were part of it. And we've heard from the AG, which is his responsibility. Now, Kevin,
this weak president refuses to do that.
And Kevin, really quick, your reaction to the ACLU jumping in to actually defend these people that wanted to protest against the removal of the Confederate statues of Robert E. Lee. So the ACLU is actually jumping in to protect them in their First Amendment right. You might not like what they have to say or what they're promoting or what they're doing, but they have the right. So what are your thoughts on that?
Unfortunately. Well, both my grandparents and my grandmother served in World War II against the Nazis to allow them the right to do that. And the ACLU has a proud history of standing up for constitutional rights, no matter how disgusting and degrading that speech may be. They have the right to do it, but we have the right to protest against them utilizing our First Amendment right, and no one should lose their life.
Why did the local police stand down?
Or that young
Why did the local police stand down and then move the Unite the Right people into the? Let me ask you.
Andrea,
hey, I didn't interrupt you just now, Kevin. I let you speak. The police stood down. And in fact, they led reportedly. They led the Unite the Right people into the path of Antifa. On top of it, let me address Kevin's point in terms of the Robert E. Lee statute. Why isn't anybody talking about that? What is with this left movement to try to remove history from the history books? Is it because, Kevin, you people are afraid that the American people might be reminded of who actually is behind slavery and the KKK and the fight to keep slavery?
Robert Lee.
Oh, right.
Robert
you know what?
E. Lee
It was
declared
not.
war
It was
on the
not
United States
President
of America,
Trump. It was
for the
not
Confederates.
President Trump who did a loving tribute to a former head of the KKK. That was Hillary Clinton, and nobody and the Democrats did not expect to denounce her. In fact,
David Duke was in Charlottesville supporting Donald Trump. David Duke, the former head of the KKK, is an ardent supporter of this president.
So that's nothing to do with President
talking
Trump.
about how this is a
Why
tipping
is President
point.
Trump responsible for that?
But nothing to do with Trump.
But you know who is supporting President Trump right now?
Because this president refuses to outwardly condemn David Duke and the KKK.
Yes, he actually did. He did condemn David Duke. So I knew you were going to try to do that one on this one.
He's condemned him for 20 years.
You too.
He's condemned him for 20 years.
We got to run. We're out of time.
Supporters and say this is a disgrace.
Well, and I just wanted to make one last point, which Andrea brought up, was the fact of this debate over the Confederate statues and, all these cities going forward with removing them. And, I do think it's a tragedy because you cannot whitewash U.S. history. So whatever you don't like about it, that doesn't mean we should just start knocking down. We should not be knocking down these statues. That's another topic for another day. Again, thank you, too, for being here.